Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's live. Well, it's early in the morning. It's midweek, Wednesday, hump day, happy hump day. So, what's the subject for the live today? Well, I know you've heard a lot about Asylum and so forth, and I've done a lot of videos on Asylum over the years. I mean, probably 100. But I'd like to focus today on the issue where someone didn't necessarily have past persecution, came to the U.S. however they came, and now wants to apply for asylum based on future persecution. Because everybody thinks that you have had to have been persecuted in the past in order to obtain asylum in the U.S., and that's not true. So I'd like to go into that. And then what I'll do is I will go back and I'll answer whatever questions you guys have had up until the point when I have to go, because I have to give consults later this morning, and then we'll go from there. And if I don't get to your questions, sorry, we'll catch it next time, type thing. Okay. So let's get into it. So the asylum, again, for most people, think, and I'll exaggerate, think like, they had to have been tortured and imprisoned and whatever, and they escaped the country and they escaped death, and that's why they're going to apply. And that if that didn't happen, if they didn't have persecution, that they can't apply. Okay. Now let's give another example. Somebody was not persecuted, but then came to the U.S., and based on their past, based on what they did in their past, and based upon the current situation in their country, they have a real fear, if they go back, that they will be persecuted. So the question is, what do you need to show for that? How do you prove it? And how can you get asylum based on that? I have people who say, well, I just don't have a lot of documentation and so forth. Well, that's not, oh, thank you, businessman. I like when you give me stuff. Thank you. You don't have to have all that, because think about it. If you're being persecuted in your home country and you're running for your life type thing, you're not going to sit down there and make a diary and get documentation of the fact that you are going to be persecuted. That's the reality. Okay? So, you don't have to have all of that documentation that you think you need in order to have a decent case. That doesn't mean that, if you happen to have it, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't help, but it's not required, because, the reality is most people who escape their countries or who leave and are going to suffer future persecution, they just don't have it. So how can you, okay, how can you go and obtain, okay, the necessary documents and information in order to go and be in a manner that you will be able to win? Okay? And the fact is, oh, thank you very much, businessman. The fact is, oh, and thank you, Alejandra. The fact is that there are all kinds of ways of obtaining evidence to show. Okay, the State Department puts out reports of every country all around the planet as to the problems they're having. And they break it down into many ways. And then there's expert, people who come from the countries who know the conditions, who are able to testify. And then there's publications, reports. There's, all kinds of things. Then there's your declaration. Okay, obviously, if you come off as not being credible, that's a problem. But you can certainly get down to business and show that for example, let's say, that you were a student and you did some protests and so forth, and you kind of were under the radar and you didn't really, you weren't persecuted. They didn't come after you, let's say. And let's say you came to the country on a B2 visitor visa, and then now it's time to go back, but you see that the current administration in your country is heavily going after students, people who protest against the government, okay? And they can show, for example, that you did used to protest, and now there's a very reasonable possibility that if you go back, they're going to get you, okay? You might be saying, well, what percentage do I have to show? How much evidence do I have to have? Do you know the law says that if you show a 10% chance that you're going to be persecuted when you go back, that is sufficient to win the asylum? Okay, not that that's easy. I mean, believe it or not, showing that is not easy by itself. But the fact of the matter is, you don't have to convince all the way up to 100% that it's going to happen. Okay? So, when it comes right down to it, the bottom line of what I'm saying is that when you're applying for asylum, don't just rely on past persecution. Don't just rely on showing everything that happened before you came to the U.S. You can most definitely show future persecution as an element and as a way of trying to win the asylum when you get to the U.S. And the evidence and documents and information that you need can be done through all kinds of manners, even though you left the country without a single document on you. Okay? It's a little different than a lot of other areas of law. Try going into a civil litigation lawsuit and try that. Okay? They'll throw you out. But in asylum, that's the reality. Okay? They're obviously not going to deny all the asylum cases because they don't have sufficient documentation, because people are not going to risk their lives to get documentation if they can get out of the country. Alrighty? So that's the bottom line. Okay, so that's the spiel for today. So now let me go back and see. Oh, thank you all for the gifts and the roses and the likes. It's early in the morning, so you had some extra ones to be able to send me early, yeah? All right. Let me see what questions we got here. Okay, we have a lot of people that joined, so I gotta. If anybody knows, tell me. I have a lot of people. It says here when I'm scrolling, it says invite so and so to join as a guest, and I'm curious, why does it pick certain people? Do these people want to come on, and do they want to ask me questions like live? Like if I click invite and they say yes, they come on the screen, and then I say, what's your immigration situation? And then we go back and forth a little bit. I've never done that on this. So if anybody knows, let me know, okay? Somebody's got to know out there. Sabidas got the #1 gifter badge. Okay. So I have a lot of invites. I mean, as I'm going down the list here, I'm passing like I must have had like 10 invites, and I just don't get how it picks to do that unless it's random, unless TikTok just picks who they think that I should invite. Okay, let's see. Oh, thank you, Business Mindset. You made me meet my goal. I got to do more. Whoa. What did I do? Okay. Just a second. Wait. I think I pressed something. Now I can't go. Oh, shoot. Just a minute. Technical difficulties. Just a minute. Technical difficulties. I'm trying to just scroll down, and then it got stuck. Just a minute. Okay. Pin. There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay, we're back on track. Okay. Let me scroll down 1 second. Oh, business mindset got the number 2 gifter badge, even though you sent me all those roses. Okay. Let's see. 1 second. Okay. Congrats. Well, we have a lot of people that joined. I'm just trying to get to the questions here. Just a minute. Okay, here we go. We got a question from Bailey. Are you able to do an adjustment of status with a nesta if you're married to a U.S. citizen in the U.S. already? The answer is technically yes, okay, but there's issues. So what Bailey's asking is she came in on a nesta. Okay, now nesta is super easy to come in on, okay? You come from countries which have less than 2% rate of people who don't go back, okay? And there's a the U.S. has the same agreement with them. So, like, let's just say, Bailey, I don't know where you're from, but let's just say you're from France, okay? And you want to come to the U.S. You come to the U.S., you get Estes 90 days, okay? So you don't need to get a visa or anything like that. And now you want to know if, since you're here, if you can adjust because you're in the U.S. And I mean, technically you can, but let me explain. You say, obviously the only way you're going to realistically adjust here is if you're going to marry a U.S. citizen. So when someone comes in as a visitor or on the ESTA, which is as a visitor, okay, they have to have what's called non-immigrant intent. That means you go to Disneyland, you visit your friends, you visit the Empire State Building, and then you go home, okay? If you come in with the intent not to do that, but with the intent to marry, then they are going to claim you had preconceived intent and that you have committed fraud in coming to the U.S. and that you did not really intend to come and visit. So while on one hand I say you can legally come in and do that because you have legal entry and so forth, it doesn't erase the issue of whether you had preconceived intent or not. So if I were the immigration officer questioning you, I'd say, well, how long did you know your husband? How long when did you get married? When did you meet him? When did you intend on marrying him? How could you come here to visit and then magically turn around and just want to marry right away? Okay. And there's all kinds of issues. You might say, well, I've known him for 2 months and I fell madly in love and now I want to get married. Well, the first thing they're going to think is if you only knew him that long, you don't really love him. You just want the green card. And then if you say you knew him for 5 years, then they're going to say, well, then you must have intended on marrying him when you came in. You just used the ESTA as a vehicle to get in. Okay? So there's ways of doing it, but it has to be done properly, and there's issues. Okay? So it's not so easy as just saying yes or no. Okay? Just a minute. Of course, I just scrolled down past your question and it scrolled 3 miles down, so now I got to go up. Oh, Bailey, I just answered you and you got the number 1 gifter badge. Okay, let's see. This is for Sal. I have an asylum court hearing coming up. Will it be a problem to marry my Canadian fiancé? Okay, the answer is no. Okay. Because you go on, as that will give me a path to Canadian residency in the U.S. Well, first of all, you don't get Canadian residency inside the U.S. Okay, you would get it in Canada. And the issue here is that asylum, you won't be granted asylum if you have been granted residency in a third country. So, if you told me that you already were a resident in Canada, and now you're applying for asylum, I'd say, well, you may as well just throw that asylum in the garbage. Okay? I don't know how strong your case is. Okay? It's a little unusual to have a good asylum case yet marry someone from Canada. I'm just saying that's a little unusual. So if you don't want it to be any issue at all, don't get married until after the asylum. But the fact that you don't have asylum there doesn't bar you from getting it in the U.S. Okay, if getting, if a path would open up to obtain in the future residency in a third country, and that would be a bar to claiming asylum in the U.S., then nobody would be able to get asylum because everybody could find some path somewhere to get some residency somewhere. Okay, I mean not everybody, but you get what I'm saying. So just make sure you do not file for residency, even if you marry your Canadian fiance. Okay? All right. Let's see what else we got. Okay. Okay, let's see. I think let me see. Are they suspending green card process for asylum and refugee? Okay. Now you're going to get me going. Trump issued an executive order which basically says, well, for some of the asylees who have won their asylum cases and are waiting to get their green cards, you, immigration, are to put a hold on processing their green cards when they apply. So the answer to your question is yes, there's an executive order from Trump that says that. But I can guarantee you that within 5 minutes after he did that, lawsuits were being prepared. He cannot do that. I mean, he can try to issue an executive order, but there's no legal basis for doing that. I mean, his total claim is that these people committed fraud and that they don't qualify for asylum and they're getting the green card based on fraud, which is a load of you-know-what. Because in order to have been granted asylum, they had to present their case, they had to present testimony, evidence, they had to go under cross-examination. The trial attorney and the immigration judge had to basically come after them to determine why they shouldn't get it. And ultimately, in the end, the immigration judge agreed and granted the asylum, and they followed the law and they were granted asylum. And the law says that after you're granted asylum, 1 year later, you can apply for the green card. There's nowhere in there that says, well, maybe you were granted asylum because you committed fraud and this and that. I mean, it's just way, way, way out there. So the chances of that executive order standing is virtually zero. I mean, it's about as low as when Trump tried, and he's still trying, to claim that people who are born in the U.S. but to parents who are not U.S. citizens will no longer have the right to be a U.S. citizen. Okay, that got blown out of the water in 5 seconds. Okay, this is very similar to that. It doesn't even push the envelope of legality. It just brushes it all aside, pretends it's not there, and makes an executive order to make people who follow happy that he's doing something type thing in regards to this. But you can't just do that. You can't just take someone who won asylum legally with everything under the law and has every legal right to apply and just make it so they can't do it. Okay, can't do that. It's not going to happen. Okay, granted, there's going to have to be lawsuits. There's going to have to be judges that are going to say, Mr. President, you can't do that. You don't have the authority. There's no basis for that. Okay, and then, of course, they'll appeal and say there is, and it'll go up and up and whatever. But So the answer to your question is yes, they're doing that. But you mark my words, when it comes down to it, that's going to be struck down as unconstitutional. Okay? So you had to get me going early in the morning, didn't you? Okay. Do you think anyone visiting the U.S. for 30 days with a Nesta would have an issue at the airport? I mean, this is from Bailey, from Australia. You know, if you ask me pre-Trump, I'd say no, there's no problem. But there's issues now everywhere, right? So understand that just because you have an ESTA doesn't mean that you are guaranteed entry to the U.S. If you were guaranteed entry to the U.S. with an ESTA, there'd be no reason to have to go through U.S. immigration once you got here. Do you understand? I mean, if there was no issue or no way that it could be revoked, rejected, or you could be returned, then you wouldn't need to have an interview. So when you come in, if something comes up, if there's issues, they can certainly turn you right back around, put you on the plane and send you back. They can put you in secondary detention. Okay, there's all kinds of stuff that could happen. So the answer to your question is yes, but it depends on the case and it depends on the issues. Okay? And again, Bailey, you're asking if the person has been here multiple times and returned, etc., does that look better? Well, technically that looks worse. Okay, I know why you're asking if it looks better. You're asking if it looks better because it shows that you're going to go back. Okay, but the reality is when you come, they don't think you're really coming to visit. Okay, I mean, they think you're coming to do something else, to work, or I know you asked me earlier, can you adjust status? So you're probably here with your boyfriend or your fiance. Okay, so that by itself does not look good. So don't just keep coming back and back on the ESTA. I'm sure you've noticed the more times you come on an ESTA, the harder it is to get in. That's the reality. So if you're from Australia and your fiance is a U.S. citizen here, just go through the process, do consulate processing and take care of business and get the green card that way. Okay? All right. You're welcome. Okay. Would like to go to green card eventually. That's from Montasalem. Everybody would like to get a green card. It all depends on the path you take. And we could be here until next month with all the different paths, okay? I mean, that's why I have so many videos out there. And you go on YouTube, I don't know how many videos I have, like 2,000 or something? I don't know. I lost track. But there's all kinds of ways. So, call my office. Okay, Mr. Grinch. Do 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 do. What can be done when it's 6 months waiting and the judge hasn't issued a written memo? That would be odd. Okay, if you went to immigration court and the case was presented, everything was done, all the evidence was given, well, then the judge has a duty to issue a decision. In 6 months, I've been practicing for 30 years. Or has it been more than 30? God, it's been more than 30 years. Can you believe that? I got licensed in 1992. That would mean 33 years. Holy cow. Wow. It never takes 6 months, ever. So it leads me to believe two things. One, your case is not done. You might have another hearing coming. There might be waiting for something. Or if in fact you are in immigration court and that's the case, you can file a writ of mandamus to force the decision, to force the judge to make a decision. But I wouldn't do that unless I reviewed your case and you had a good chance of winning. Okay, if you have issues and there's not a good chance of winning, why do a writ of mandamus? Because that forces a decision, but doesn't force a yes. It may force a no. Okay. Last question from Bailey. Bailey, do you know what? Everybody always says last question and then they have another question. I'm just telling you. With consular processing, the foreign spouse allowed to visit, not realistically. Not realistically. Okay. I mean, technically you can, but the reality is, especially from Australia, that's like 12 hours, right? I mean, you're coming halfway across the planet, and then they're going to find out that you definitely intend on becoming a resident. You definitely do not have non-immigrant intent, and they will turn you around. Now, if you wait in line for 20 minutes for a ticket and then they say tickets are gone and then, you go back, that's one thing. But if you're going to fly halfway around the planet and then be turned around, I wouldn't do that. So just take care of business and just do the consulate processing. Tell your fiance to come to Australia. Okay? That's that. Okay. Canadian on a TN. Is there a pro of going from TN to H1B? I live in a border city and commute daily. Well, yes. The issue is if you ever want to get the green card, and again, talking about non-immigrant intent, with an H1B, it has what's called dual intent. Okay? Dual intent is where you can have non-immigrant intent and immigrant intent at the same time. Okay? You can't have that with a TN. So for people, for example, who are on H1B, who come in my office, we do the H1B, and then then we start with the perm, do the I-140 adjustment, all that stuff. You can't do that with a TN. I mean, theoretically, if the timing is right, you might be able to, but you try renewing a TN with a previously filed perm, that's not happening. Okay? So that's that. Okay, let's see. Oh, Bailey, you're the U.S. citizen. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I understand. I guess your husband or your fiance's in Australia. Sorry, mate. That's a little Australian humor. Okay. Let's see. One second. We're approaching the end here because I do have to take care of some consults. But let me just see if I can catch a couple more questions before I have to log off. Yes, he said you would approve the case after the 601 waiver was filed. We filed it in September. That's a little odd because if you filed the 601 waiver, you need to get the waiver approved. So it seems to me like the judge is waiting for the waiver to be approved before he goes forward. Okay, so you need to look and see what the status of the waiver is. Okay. Let's see. How long does it take to update the I-99 after a B2 extension? Well, the real question is, how long does it take to get a B2 extension approved? Because if you do it right, once it's approved, you get the updated I-94 immediately. Okay, but there's no premium processing for a B2 extension. And assuming you do it right, there's some people that by the time they get the approval, the extension's already expired. Okay, so you got to be aware of that because you'll never get more than 6 months for sure. Okay. What do you need to do when your green card expired 10 years ago? Well, I don't know if you're inside the U.S. or not, but just because your green card expired doesn't mean that you've lost residency. You're still a resident. I'll tell you what I do. The first time that someone comes to my office and they say that, I see if they qualify for citizenship. Because if you qualify for citizenship, again, you don't have to have the physical current green card to do that. You just have to be a resident and meet the other qualifications. Why wouldn't you become a citizen if you could? Right? I mean, I know, like, for taxable purposes, sometimes they don't want to become a citizen. And also for property ownership in different countries, they don't want to become a citizen. But if that doesn't exist, then I would see if you can become a U.S. citizen. Okay? Alrighty, just a second. What is the cost for a consultation? Well, the initial consultation's free, but it's very brief. I mean, I can get down to business and find out everything that needs to be done in usually less than 3 minutes. However, sometimes people have a lot of different issues and they want considerably more explanation. So I have 2 different ways. For 20 minutes, I charge $250. For 30 minutes, I charge $350. And we get all into it, okay? And you have a good understanding after, okay? You say your extension's approved, but your I-94 hasn't been updated yet. That's not usual, okay? I mean, you should be able to, you can go down to USCIS and have them update that, okay? That's not an issue. Let's see. Okay. Can I still live in Canada and work in the US on H-1B? Yeah, there's no problem. No problem at all. You understand, to get an H-1B, though, first you have to get an H-1B. And it's a lottery. So, obviously there's no lottery with the TN, and you can do that a lot easier. But, if you can get in the lottery, and you only need to do it one time, but if you can get in the lottery and get the H-1B, it's no problem. They don't care. Okay? Can I get married to a U.S. citizen if I have 20-year ban re-entry from Canada? I mean, the answer is yes. I think your real question is, if you get married, can you then come in? Okay. I need to know why you have a 20-year ban. Because if you have a 20-year ban, chances are you might have a lifetime ban. Are you an aggravated felon? I need to know if you can qualify for consulate processing. So you can get married. That's not an issue. The issue is what you need to do to get the green card after. Okay. Alrighty. Well, the questions keep coming, but I have to get ready for my consults. They're waiting. They have it pre-scheduled. That's how it is. So I appreciate all the gifts and whatever. Hey, I got 1.7. I got 1,700 hearts. What say you give me some more and I can get up to 2,000 before I log off? Yeah? Hey, I'll tell you what. I'll answer one more question big time, and maybe you guys can make the hearts come through and we can get up to 2,000. Okay, let's see, just a second. He's going, thanks, guys. No, I don't have any history of arrest. I went to see Asylum and I was in removal proceedings. Okay, this is from Courts. What was your first question? I forgot what your first question was. Can I get married to a U.S. citizen? Oh, and I have a 20-year ban for re-entry from Canada, Asylum. Okay, I mean, it's possible. Oh, we got up there. Thanks, guys. Oh, we even got more than 2,000. Holy cow, you guys sent it so quick. Okay, so it's possible, but give my office a call. I need to get some specifics. How to get a consult. You can either call my office, okay, and I know I can say the number, but how many times do people write it down or remember? But it's 562-495-0554, but you can get that from my information, or you can actually self-schedule it, okay? belearner.timetap.com, okay? And you can self-schedule it. And you can either schedule the free one, or you can do the 20-minute or 30-minute, okay? You guys are great. Holy cow, I went from 1,800 to 2,300 in like 30 seconds. Thanks, guys. All right. Well, it's been a good day, yeah? Love you guys too. All right. I'm going to log off now. You all have a good day and enjoy the rest of your week. Until the next live, I'll be back.